Hello guys! Today we're going to be continuing our 58-part series on business leadership by discussing how to deal with an insubordinate employee. Now, in an ideal world, you and your employees are always getting along great. They're following all your orders, they're never questioning your decisions, and you get them to work late every day for zero overtime. Unfortunately, this is not an ideal world, so you do need to be prepared for when an employee gives you some back talk. So today we'll be learning how to do just that. To illustrate what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to look at one of the best business leaders of all time, Saruman the Wise, noted industrialist, land developer, and wizard. We'll be checking out how he deals with an insubordinate employee, Gandalf the Grey. Though, by the end of this, you'll be calling him Gandalf the Fool. Okay, so to set the stage, Saruman is currently conducting a merger with Mordor and its leader, Sauron. Now, Mordor and Sauron used to be enemies of Saruman and his people, so Saruman knows announcing this is gonna ruffle some feathers, to say the least. However, before he brings any of this up to Gandalf, notice what Saruman says to him on that same day when Gandalf announces he's managed to discover a hidden asset.
All these long years, it was in the Shire, under my very nose.
And yet you did not have the wit to see it. Your love of the halfling's leaf has clearly slowed your mind.
What Saruman's doing here is undermining Gandalf's self-confidence, something you want to constantly be doing as an employer. You want your employees believing in you, not themselves, so that in any kind of a big situation, they'll take your side. And remember, consistency is key. You want to insult your employees frequently, even if they haven't done anything to deserve it, which is what we in the business world call maintenance insults. You want especially to demean their intelligence, appearance, social skills, or even their family. Just make sure those comments are always a bit veiled. We don't want HR getting involved now, do we? Now, let's fast forward a bit to when Saruman is actually telling Gandalf about the merger.
Against the power of Mordor, there can be no victory. We must join with him, Gandalf. We must join with Sauron. It would be wise, my friend.
Wow, so much to unpack here. First, one thing Saruman does is couch the news of joining Sauron with two justifications about why they need to do this. That there can be no victory against them, and that it would be wise. Instead of just telling Gandalf what's happening and expecting him to get with the program, Saruman tells him why doing this is what's best for everyone. Obviously, as an employee, Gandalf should just go along with whatever Saruman wants, but in a case where you know an employee could react negatively, a little justification can really go a long way. Additionally, notice his using the term, my friend, showing Gandalf that even though he's being told some bad news, Saruman still cares about him and considers him a valuable member of this firm. This also goes along with those maintenance insults we talked about earlier. Insult your employees, yes, but then also make sure you tell them how much you care about them and how you're their only friend. Alright, so let's see how Gandalf responds to all of this.
Tell me, friend, when did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness?
So here we see clear signs of insubordination. What Gandalf should have said was something like,
You know, Saruman, I don't agree with that personally, but as my overseer, I recognize you know what's best in this situation.
Unfortunately, Gandalf has resorted to insulting his boss. Never a cool move. Now, the novice boss probably does one of two things here. He either lets his temper get the best of him by firing the employee immediately, or he bends to his employee's will. Immediate firing probably isn't a good option because, as far as we know, Gandalf has been a great employee up until this point, so he's probably the kind of guy you'd prefer to keep around if possible, and spending another 1,000 years training someone else to do his job, well, that'd just be a poor use of resources. On the other hand, you don't want to just immediately acquiesce by saying, yeah, fair point, I was wrong. As a manager, you're never wrong. Ever. So instead of those two paths, let's see how Saruman responds. Here we see Saruman not tolerating Gandalf's attitude at all, as he immediately reprimands Gandalf by hurling him to the ground. However, he doesn't fire him at this point. After some more exchanges between the two, What happens next really shows how great of a manager Saruman is. Instead of continuing the fight, Saruman isolates Gandalf in the top of Orthanc. Why does he do this? Well, when you criticize or tell an employee some bad news, it's easy for them to get upset about it in the moment. One of the best things you can do then is to give the employee, and maybe even yourself, some time to cool off, reflect on things, so that you can have a more reasoned conversation later. Remember, as a manager, you want to function based on logic, not emotions. Now, let's check out what happens after the two have had a chance to calm down.
The friendship of Saruman is not lightly thrown aside. One ill turn deserves another. It is over. Embrace the power of the ring, or embrace your own destruction.
What Saruman does here is that, before he asks Gandalf to make any kind of a decision, he tells him what the consequences will be if he fails to obey. As a manager, you never want to spring a punishment on an employee. You want to make sure they know exactly what will happen ahead of time if they fail to do what they're supposed to do. You really want to instill a state of constant fear and terror into them. Here, Saruman is showing how, if Gandalf were to leave the company, he would be abandoning Saruman's friendship, i.e., no letter of reference when he tries for his next employer, and that if he fails to comply, he will embrace his own destruction, i.e., be fired. Unfortunately, Gandalf here fails to see the bigger picture, so he jumps off the tower and flies away on an eagle, effectively quitting. This is one of the hardest things for a manager to deal with. Sometimes you can do everything right when dealing with an employee, such as Saruman did here, but it just doesn't work. That's why I think Saruman's response here is so powerful.
So you have chosen death.
Notice Saruman isn't angry or full of self-pity, wondering if he made the right call on any of this. He simply states matter-of-factly that Gandalf made the wrong choice, and then goes back to working as a manager. And as we can see here, ends up getting a much more loyal and hardworking employee in his stead. Remember, as a manager, you don't make wrong decisions, and if an employee quits because of something you did, well, that's their problem, not yours. So to summarize, when dealing with an insubordinate employee, undermine their self-confidence, justify why your way is the right way, compliment them, discipline them, isolate them, warn them, and no regrets if they still fail to obey you. All of which you can remember with this handy acronym, Uxid Ivin. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to tune in next time where we'll be taking a look at how you can increase workplace productivity by being a giant flaming eyeball that sees all. Until then, keep on businessing.